Thanks everyone for coming. And this is the third part that I was planning before my departure to Oroville. And the whole objective here is to catalyze that what we've created in Oroville, which I think is something very special. And the more that I go out and see the sort of inverted commas normal world that we're born into and sort of inherit, what we think is normal, like systems like that are just imposed on us and they aren't necessarily the best way to do things, the more I value my choice 15 years ago to have established a home there. I always had a deep love for India. Joan, where she had some influence on that, she introduced me to Ayurvedic medicine, it goes back to about 1500 BC, the Ayurvedic medicine. And Ayu was about not just medicine, it was about living a wholesome, long life so you could give yourself in the highest way to life. And in 99, Joan introduced me to Ayurveda, and then I got bitten. It's like a virus. I won't use that. After my father passed away in 2003, I said I have to go to India. I had already been to about 60 odd countries. I traveled extensively and lived around the world and learned a lot of languages and immersed myself in many different places. And I said I'm going to go for a month. This was in August 2003 to India, and that's like my famous last words because I'm still in India. And this is 2021 now, and that was 2003. And then in 2007-8 I went to Oroville as a tourist. Now, it was already an established community. It was almost 50 years old. And once again, I thought I'm just going to visit it, like you go to, visit someone as a tourist. And the first thing I saw was the dynamized water. And I'd been working for a year on water in the townships in Joburg to use water to help people to heal, because your body's mostly water, and water is very important. So that obviously impressed me, and I saw, wow, they've got water awareness. And then I realized they've got much more than water awareness. They had awareness of virtually everything in life that you could think of. That means from the clothing you wear, how we build roads, how you offer education, how you make rules and no rules, how you grow food. So it was like discovering Disney World, but in the best possible way, in a place that you want to live, in the sense that like you think of this childhood sort of paradise. But for me, for someone who was looking in a more, I'd already been in the sort of corporate world a little bit, dabbled in like sort of what the world could offer. It was like a dream come true. And the beauty of living in Oroville, as I've seen the project evolve and grow around me. So it's a very dynamic project, and this is really what the community should become: a dynamic place, a place that it's not the same every time you visit it. It's constantly transforming, it's constantly growing, improving, and it's constantly growing you. You should feel like a good parent. You always feel like you're nourished by parents. So ironically, Oroville was started by the mother. Now what does a mother do? The mother nourishes you, the mother gives you everything, wisdom and protection and nourishment. And the mother obviously had that idea of creating a place that gives you that motherliness, which is the real motherliness, unconditional love, unconditional support for fulfilling your dreams, for doing the things that you want to do, for whatever gifts. Like people often say, what work should I do when I come to Oroville? I think a few of you have written to me, and the mother said, do what you want to do and then make that your work. So one of the basis of the Oroville community was, like, a lot of people here have to work for money, and if I lived in South Africa permanently, that force would sort of grip me, because you don't really have a choice, because you need the key. Money is like a key that opens a door, unless you're in a community, and we don't have much communities in South Africa. We're going to look at what we have in the presentation. So Oroville really is giving that motherliness on a much deeper level, nourishing us. And the whole point of this part 3, part 1 and 2, part 1 was talking about what Oroville is, and part 2 was saying, can we do it in South Africa, and how would we do it? And part 3 is a culmination of my research on this trip to South Africa, and it's specific to South Africa, of the condition of South Africa. How do we do it in South Africa? And what do we need to do? What skills do we need? What amount of time? Time is the real currency we need. It's not about, people often think you can just buy a community. There was a community I visited that was started, you might know about it, Baviaans Fontein or Kloof, or Kloof. And there was a very wealthy guy, and he funded it and bankrolled it, but it didn't fly as a community. Because you don't just need money to make a community. You actually need people, and you need people who are giving themselves to something higher that's going to be left beyond your lifetime. It's not about what you reap from the community in your lifetime. There's going to be something higher that you're going to leave there. Like in Oroville, I know whatever I'm doing now, even if I disappear, it's going to have a continuum, and it's going to ripple and improve the world, Oroville, India, further. And that's the way that Oroville forces you, in the most beautiful way, to think about life. It's a whole different paradigm. And really, it's the only paradigm to think about life, is life as, I mean, we look at the whole history of human civilization. I've been working with early language. Like 70,000 years ago, we were in Pinnacle Point, in Blombos Cave, in Still Bay. We were foraging. We had no agriculture. We didn't have any domestic animals. We had very simple stone tools. And we've got this very complex, incredible world now. But what can we do with all these gifts? We need to create a higher society. It's not just about make a few billionaires and enrich them. It's about bring society up to the highest level possible. Now, of all the places I've visited, I'm not saying Oroville's perfect. Oroville is the one that's moving in that direction the fastest and the most beautifully. So that's what we're talking about today, and that's my introduction for part 3. So this first slide is like basically the Western Cape, and we're dreaming that there's going to be a few of these communities, and they're going to be linked together, and the strength will come from the unity. Now, I'm agnostic about where they are. They can be right here, and I know that Judy wants to do one here. They can be in Cape Point. They can be pretty much anywhere. I'm not particular on the land, because Oroville was a wasteland. Picture the worst land on the road, the N7 up to Namibia. That's how Oroville was, like just barren land that has absolutely nothing. And then we planted 5 million trees. The trees brought water. They brought a different climate. The trees brought animals, birds, and the whole ecosystem changed. So many people are like looking for that perfect land, and obviously there's different reasons for saying this land or that land. I say do communities anywhere. We'll give the next presentation in Oroville. We've got a lovely lecture hall. That's my favorite hall there, which we've used. So the idea is that we need to do something in South Africa, and the beauty is that, I mean, I'm even looking with the pandemic, there's so many incredible South Africans doing incredible things. We've got this culture of incredible people creating great leaders. So we've got the people that are needed. Like if I took all of you to Oroville, you would love it and you would fit in. So not everyone wants to go live in India. It's hot, you sweat a lot, it's in the tropics. The British said of Pondicherry, they said there's 3 climates: hot, hotter and more hot. And I actually like heat. In Ayurveda it's good for Vata, and I have a lot of Vata. Yeah, you could come with pleasure, thanks. So the idea is really, it's not just about South Africa and the Western Cape, but the idea is to make these communities globally, and there are already communities, but we need to make successful, large, independent communities, and then create a network of these. This is really like a 100-year work, but I think in South Africa we can do something quite unique. So what I'm presenting is a model that I think could work in South Africa. We do have constraints in South Africa, like crime is a constraint. We have other constraints like legal constraints. You can't ignore them. Oroville doesn't ignore the law. Even though the mother said a divine anarchy, we still follow the laws of India. If we didn't, the project would not be able to exist. So you can't just ignore the context you're in. Similar to Oroville and inspired by Oroville, and inspired by its success of being a successful, vibrant community. And the model I'm going to present, it does require work, which is currency basically. I mean, that's like your time is your main. So it needs pioneers basically. Oroville had pioneers. In the days of Oroville, there was nothing there. The pioneers were very much planting and making the forest. There was no forest, no trees. A lot of them just came, like drove from Europe. They heard about this idea, and then people just drove across Asia and came there. So there was this incredible spirit of pioneers, and now Oroville's obviously got the grandkids of the pioneers living there. So it's totally changed. So the pioneering phase is where the risk of failure is the highest, basically. So the idea that I thought of is study the weak points where it can fail and make sure that we kind of build in that it can succeed in South Africa. Because the only communities that I've seen that are, we went to Lyndoch, and that's probably the only eco-village that exists in South Africa that I know of that is successful. I'm not talking about a very small, like sort of family living.
Where is that?
That's just by Stellenbosch. And when I say successful, it started in 1999.
It doesn't seem very community though.
It's
does
not
it?
community,
No.
no. And the reason it's not community is that they have individual ownership of property. But it still is an eco-village. It is a village and it is ecological. So it ticks some of the boxes. Their roads were recycled bricks. Their buildings are very eco. I mean, probably the most eco buildings that I've seen in South Africa in one place, because they have building guidelines. But yes, you don't feel like people eat together or are sharing. I'm sure there is a lot of shared resources going on, but it's not. That's the main thing you feel in Oroville, is that theme of sharing resources, basically. Eating collectively, growing food collectively, running businesses for the community rather than just independent businesses. As I said, I'm agnostic about where the community is, but we need to choose a place and then focus on that, because everyone needs to be. So there can be multiple places, but it'll be easier to just focus on one place initially. So these pioneer communities for the Western Cape, I'm limiting it to the Western Cape for now. I've just been in the Northern Cape, and actually it's lovely. There's many capes, and you could be in any state, but we just look at the Western Cape. So Stanford is one option because there is a land there that is close enough to Cape Town. The person who bought the land a number of years ago wants it to be a community, and it could be like a pilot community. It might not be the ideal place for many of you or for some of you, but it's one that I just used as a model, and that model can be duplicated anywhere else you want. It can be duplicated here, Cape Point, Cedarburg. I've just been in Pap Kaalsfontein up in Nieuwoudtville. I loved that area. I mean, actually, I think there was a canyon there. I mean, if you just want to choose incredible geography, it had waterfalls and canyons. Some of you might want that. But South Africa is so beautiful. Almost anywhere you go is going to be wonderful. And there's certain things you need to sort of make sure are going to be there, like water and not high crime and so forth. So we're just going to look at Stanford as a model, but I'm not saying we have to build a community in Stanford. It's just that option is on the table. And I'm going to show you the model where a farm in Stanford could become the start of a community, and that same model could be duplicated somewhere else. So this is the plan that we did. This is actually done by Rishi, who lives there. This is the land, and our artist volunteer in India did this. And Rishi, I just said to Rishi, who lives there, this is not locked in. I said, just dream up where the community would be and what would be there. She knows the land very intimately. And she also knows what would work, where the wind is, where the sun is, where the trees are, where the water is. So this is her design that I asked her to do. So because she holds the land at the moment. And we can discuss this. The important point here is that when I've discussed this with the zoning people, we don't have to rezone it or work on the agri-zoning, which it is, so you don't have to rezone it, but you do need to get a permission to do what you want to do. If you don't do that, the government can demolish it in 30 days. So obviously if you're in a very remote place, then maybe no one knows about it, but that's not the way to do it, the way that I'm presenting. The way to do it is you work with the systems and you find a way forward, basically. So on these, I call these like small farm communities, and now Oroville is a community of communities. You've got more than 100 communities in a community, because they found that a human can only really know about 150 people. So even though we've got 3,000 people, you can only really connect, according to our brain design, with about 150 people. So my idea in South Africa is use the agri-zoning, work within it, find a community that works there, that can be a micro community or a little community, and then link those together. So you start with one farm, and then you build more farms, and you link those together. And eventually, by the time you've got 5 or 6 lands, you've got something that's looking like Oroville. And you're sharing resources, and the ownership is all under one legal entity. It can all be done. So for Stanford, and this could be anywhere else where you want to do it, it's a farm-based community. So you're using farmland. Using other zoned land is going to come with hurdles and obstacles. Lyndoch has like a kind of mixed zoning that wasn't agri, so they've used it to their favor, but they don't farm. And for me, farming or having big open spaces or foraging spaces is very important to have food security and self-sustenance. So the zoning in the Western Cape says every municipality is a little bit different, but you can basically have 7 primary residences. And for example, on this one, the first main house is very big. It's about 400 square meters. So you could have a few families living there. There is an allowance for that if the people are connected with each other. So I put the numbers. I think it's around 20 to 35 people per farm. But it could be, and this is the permanent people. Then obviously floating population, your volunteers, students, interns, people coming temporarily, they would be more per farm with guest facilities. So, and then the idea is to expand. So once you have one farm and you've stabilized one farm, and then you expand and you have more farms. Now you might find huge farms, like you get the farms out in Namibia or in Namakwaland. They can be thousands of acres. But this one is 100 hectares in particular. And then the model to acquire the land is a hybrid model, which is it's exactly what Oroville's done. It's a stewardship model where if there's existing homes, people steward that at the actual value of the home. They don't own it, but they become the steward, which is effective ownership. And if they want to exit, which is unlikely, you don't have a high exit rate in Oroville. It's quite low, the amount of people that want to leave Oroville. But in your community, if people do want to leave, then someone comes in who wants to replace them, and they take over and steward that property, and they undonate and they redonate. And then you will have your commercial and non-commercial activities. So in Oroville, we have commercial and non-commercial, but even our commercial activities are fundraising for the community. But we also have hybrid of sort of outside projects that are linked to Oroville. Sometimes there's a hybrid model. So all these economic models can go there. But the whole idea is that all the immovable assets are owned by the community. This is an important point that Oroville has achieved, and it's also, I think, probably the main reason for one of its big reasons for the success, because you don't have this idea of I own this, he owns that, this is mine. We're all stewarding it, and we're all part of this collective vision. So we're really working together for a common goal, and that's what a community is. I mentioned last time about the phases. So we're talking about the pioneer phase. So the vision needs to be established and written down. Your guidelines need to be established and written down. Your legal structures need to be, so you create your legal structures. It's either going to be a trust or not-for-profit company. You need to gather people, which is what we're doing now. And then obviously get people who want to commit their time. We need people who are going to give their time initially, who are going to be part of the community. So everyone becomes a volunteer, and everyone is equal. Doesn't matter what job you're doing in the community, what your level of responsibility is. You're all equal. You're a member of the community. And then we will need people to take different responsibilities in different groups. Someone will need to deal with zoning, someone will need to deal with fundraising, someone with legal, someone with agriculture, someone with water. So ideally, people who have experience or expertise in those fields would be good, but it doesn't have to always be like that, but it does help to have teams like that. And then we create plans, and my project that I'm incubating in Oroville called CEDAR can handhold the community through all these phases using the expertise in Oroville. So for drafting the vision, the guidelines, the legal structures are South African specific, but I've met with lawyers and I've got a blueprint to use. And there's a cheap route and there's an expensive route, and I'll present that to you now. Well, not expensive, but there's a paid route and one where we just do it ourselves. But I would recommend the paid route because you do need legal advice. There's a lot of risk involved if you do it wrong, because you might do it free and then 5 years later find your trust is not properly structured because you didn't check this clause, and then you risk the whole community. It's not worth it. So rather pay 20,000 Rand now, get a proper lawyer to do all the legal for the community, and then you don't have those risks. It's their diligence that's coming into it. And then we will be making 1 and 5 year plans dealing with everything: water, sustainability, economics, how to become economically sustainable, housing, how to house everyone, growth, how to grow more communities and link them together. So everything really has a kind of blueprint. It's like a big project, a complex project, but there will be kind of like agreed upon milestones. So whoever comes in knows this is where we're heading, and whoever joins the community should be part of and take ownership for what we're collectively doing. In Oroville, I feel proud of what Oroville's doing. I mean, if we do a conference on conscious fashion, I feel it's my conference. That's how you should feel. You shouldn't feel like this, you just, like in Cape Town, you'll go to a conference and you just feel you're attending the conference. In Oroville, I feel like if someone does a conference, I feel I'm part of that conference. Because I'm part of the community, and this is a different way of understanding your relationship with society. So you're pioneers in this room. Whoever's made it to my third lecture and hasn't, So, and what are we pioneering? So what do we need from pioneers? We need time. Time is the currency you need. It's not such an easy currency to give because we've got pulls in many different directions, and we've got obligations to our families, financial obligations. So there is some sacrifice. It's like when I wanted to learn Sanskrit, and then I realized it's really difficult. So I went and enrolled in university, and the professor said, 10 hours a week, and if you miss and you fall out of the rhythm, you're never going to catch up. And I kept that in my head, basically. Like, I have to say, like, 10 hours a week. And I did the 10 hours a week, and then I eventually, got into a good position of knowing the language. So whoever's going to be a pioneer and whoever's going to be a member of this community, you need to make that commitment. It's not like just a vague thing. It doesn't mean it has to be all your time. It's not all your time we're asking for, but there has to be a commitment of time. So that's what's needed by the pioneers, really. And then pioneers offer time, skill, and resources. We've had like people that came. There was a woman who lived in Japan who was very well off, and she was too frail to offer her physical, so she just donated. But the donations were very specifically channeled in a very conscious way. It wasn't just like buying your way into Oroville. So there are obviously, it doesn't have to always be labor or your skills. It can also be giving, your resources that you've built up over your lifetime, if you're not in a position to give labor or skills at that period of your life, for example. And the pioneers basically seed the community. It's like birthing it. It's a very important phase. It's kind of like a rocket when it's launching. The failures can happen in the early phase before it's sort of in orbit. So it's the most fragile phase, and it's the phase that we need. That's why the organization I'm creating sort of for holding this for communities is trying to give blueprints, almost like a manual, like this is how you create a community. And I'm really studying successful communities, which is Oroville primarily. And the vision is very important, to have a common vision, and that when people join, they're seeing and reading, this is the vision of the community, and these are the guidelines, and they're agreeing with it. They're not like, if you've written the vision, and the vision is, say, to preserve ecology was one of your points, or to do research into consciousness or to deeper human aspiration, and someone is not interested in that, and they've agreed to the vision, then it's very important to write that vision down, have it on the website, have it when people join the community, they should know this is the vision and these are the guidelines. In Oroville, it's very clear. When you onboard in Oroville, you're agreeing to be part of the vision and the guidelines. And I agree with all the vision. And it was like, whoa, these are just a dream come true. Like Oroville's a place for research. It's a place for researching youthfulness, like keeping regenerative technologies, like how to maintain your vibrancy throughout life. Who doesn't want that? Who would not? Even Jeff Bezos has now created a $1 billion for looking to extend his lifespan. So, but we are doing it in a more conscious sort of grassroots up level, and we're creating something that you can't really buy, which is a whole community which is looking at wholesomeness. So this is a fifth point here is everyone is a volunteer. So on our visa for Oroville, when we come there, it says honorary volunteer. So everyone who comes to Oroville is basically giving to the community. You're in the spirit of volunteer. You're not an owner. You're not a shareholder. Like people want to start communities in South Africa and they want to be shareholders. And I say, fine, do that. But that's not what I've seen work in Oroville. I've seen a volunteer-based community where everyone is giving for the greater good, basically, in their own way that they can give. You can also receive. I receive. You don't. It's like you can come to Oroville and give, and then at a phase of your life you can't give, or you're not in a position to give, and you will receive. It's not just giving, but giving is the common unity between everyone. Okay. So in Oroville, usually when people come and join my office, we suggest 25 hours a week of giving time. So like a work week is 40 hours in South Africa. So it's a little bit more than half your work week that you would be giving to the community. That might not be practical for everyone. Some might give less time, but this is a guideline. I'm just sharing what Oroville does. And it also is enough time to move forward. You need people to give time. So you can nourish and build your community, but still keep your other activities that maybe are non-communal alive, and that it doesn't mean you have to drop everything and join the community, but I would work towards 25 hours a week as the time commitment of people who want to join the community. Does that seem realistic? Is that a lot? I mean, that's what we do in our first year. So we've got to get a name and a symbol. Let's say for Stanford, I would just stick with the existing name, and there was a nice logo. It's already called Goodwill Mountain Eco Village. If we're doing one here in Monkey Valley, we'd create a name and a symbol. That's just a work. That's one of the works, and the team has to work on that and agree this is our name and symbol. It can change, but Oroville established this symbol. It has the central point of consciousness, and it has the different aspects of life basically around it. So it was the 5 different divine mothers, basically, for those interested, those 5 divisions. And the vision, so I've just written the Oroville vision, which I really love. And what we would do is we would give a reference model, and then we would collectively agree this is the vision of what. So let's say it's going to be Stanford. This is the vision, and we need to write that down. And people need to agree on it. So I would use what works in Oroville as a model, and then adapt it for here and add or subtract. I'll just ask this as a Q&A because this is meant to be a little bit interactive, like a conference. For those because some of you have been here for the first and second, is there anything you would add or subtract from the vision of Oroville that's not there? You can maybe just speak, put your hand up and then suggest something. Or is there anything you would change? I'm not saying you should adapt that exact vision, but if anyone sees a point that they disagree with, it would be good to record this because this process needs to happen. Saying like maybe this should be part of the community, maybe this shouldn't be part of the community. So in Oroville it was about unity, bringing people together in human unity, which is very broad but it's very beautiful. And then to make a more conscious life. All life is yoga, so like this kind of, okay, this is linked to the Indian idea of uniting with something higher and a higher purpose. It doesn't belong to anyone, the community. So it's basically not owned by anyone, it's owned by humanity as a whole and everyone. And then a place where children can be nourished and developed integrally. Education is for higher enrichment. It's not just to get a paper. There's a celebration of beauty in the community. Money is not the sovereign lord. It's a very important point. For 5,000 years we've had the system called money, and now it's gone into a crazy system where the money's not even real. It's sort of virtual and multiplied blindly, and it's kind of an enslavement system mostly. And most people are struggling and in a kind of poverty. And it's something that needs to be, the technology that we've had for 5,000 years needs to be transformed into something where everyone has what they need. That's what the community gives. And then we offer ourselves and our energy for something higher. So money is not sovereign lord. This is a very important point. Working for higher expression and service, collaboration and brotherhood. Bridging the past and the future. In South Africa, I've been working deeply with the San and the Khoi communities, their languages. So I would bridge that into the communities in South Africa. They have been marginalized, there's been linguicide, genocide, and they've been forgotten, and they have such beautiful communities. They actually can teach us so much about community. In their stories, in their language, there is community woven. They didn't have ownership because they were foraging. They were just having whatever was there. And a site of material and spiritual research. So my work is research work in Oroville. So this is an important point. Is in the conference sort of aspect, is there anything that anyone would suggest? I mean, I'm just putting it to the floor, or remove. You can raise your hand.
I would just have a question of like how this vision is realized in terms of like active participation from the members.
Well,
how is the vision lived?
Right, the vision keeps you on alignment, basically. It gives you the direction. This is the direction. So every action, whenever we have a decision to make in the community, like whether we're planting a tree or making a wind turbine, we run it by the vision. Is it in alignment with our vision? This is our sort of compass. And if things go off the rails and they aren't working out, we look at the vision and say, how can we realign this with the vision? So the vision is basically like a constitution for why are we here. Otherwise, it's just a golf estate, or you can go and live in a golf estate and you can eat together and play golf together, but you're not working towards a common goal. So it's really the common goals that we're developing, and it's not like you have to follow these and like print and to them. It's basically like a compass for the community. That's what it is. Does that answer your question? You had a suggestion.
I would think something about unifying humans with nature again.
Yes,
I'm
absolutely.
not sure if it's
Ecology.
in there already,
So
but
that's a very great.
something more about
Right. So
restoring ecology.
it's a great point. Remember, Orville was started. The ideas came in the 50s and the 40s, and then it formed in the 60s, where the whole thing of ozone layer, global warming, climate change, it hadn't really sort of come so strong as it is today. So basically, Orville is extremely ecological. It's part of GEN, the Global Eco Village Network. It's one of the most ecologically aware places I've ever lived. It hosts a lot of ecological conferences. So that's just come naturally through having this idea of unity and of consciousness. Ecology just comes naturally. It's like Joan's teacher Maharishi, he gave a lecture on vegetarianism, and he said, it was in Chennai before he started the movement, the TM, he said, you don't have to make people vegetarian, you just have to make them aware of their nature, and it will happen naturally. So it seems that's how it happened in Orville. People just became aware of consciousness, and from the consciousness they became aware of protecting nature because they felt that connection. But yes, we can write that into, so like in Lindach, that's been written into the guidelines. So I would add that. That's exactly one of the points that I feel we should add. Anyone else has? So thank you for that. So make a note of that, Judy, that we add that for the vision for these communities. Thank you.
I have a question. At the moment, we still have got the world of the fiat money,
Yeah.
the money that we've been using up till now, which we know is completely distorted. We have to get rid of it. And the only way we can do it is but unfortunately, is while we're linked to it, while
Yeah.
it still exists, it means that quite often you have to buy things that are only available in that medium, or you might have to get rid of connections that could come and take your land away, like banks, etc., like that.
Right.
So now you've got the people who've got money, and they would bring money to the party, but you've got people who already know that they're the ones who are really dying to get this going, and who don't have money, but they have all their skills and their time to offer. So I'm finding it very difficult to work out what should be the correct relationship
Right.
between them. Are they all,
You mean between
do
money-
you have to wait for the people who completed your money situation before you can get the volunteers building?
Oh no, you see this. So when I went to volunteer in Orville, I went and everyone's in a different situation right now. So your entry point in the community, you might need to be sustained by the community from day one. Obviously in the pioneer phase, the community is not going to be able to sustain people. Like a newborn baby cannot feed you. But once the community is an adult like Orville, it can sustain you. So Orville we have volunteers come in and we give them food, we give them accommodation, we give them transport. So I've had volunteers in my office for a year or longer where they didn't need technically money. I'm not saying they would live a luxury, or by many standards would be luxurious, because they'd be eating the Solar Kitchen lunch, which is an organic, mostly buffet from our own farms, for free. So once the community is mature, money becomes less an issue. When we're pioneering and seeding, we do have to deal with money. We have to transition into the moneylessness. But because we have a hybrid model that I've developed for South Africa of stewards coming in who would have money, maybe they would sell their properties in Cape Town and then move to the community. They would have some money to steward, and that would fuel the initial phase of acquiring the land. That's the model I'm going to present. And then there would be a fundraising team built from day one, and they would be trained on fundraising. So you've got a hybrid model, plus you're going to be getting PBO status, and you're going to be start getting funding from all sorts of sources. Like Orville's getting money from everywhere. We just get hundreds of different sources of money. It doesn't matter where the money is, let it come to Orville. It's not our problem where it came.
Does the money come with any strings? Like you've
No,
got organizations.
If it comes with strings, we won't take it, basically.
Yes.
It's that simple.
So the money that you're getting in from organizations across the world,
It's never been coming with a string.
no strings attached.
The only thing is there might be a specified money, like they might say this is for a wind turbine. And then we can, obviously we've asked, we need a wind turbine, and then they'll give the money for a wind turbine. If we go and spend it on cows, then the donor's not going to be happy. Like I receive grants for Sanskrit research, and I report all my expenditure and accounting, and it's transparent to the donor. We've spent it on Sanskrit research. But that's not a string attached. That's just the contract of the donor saying I'm giving. So there's unspecified and specified donations, but there's not donations like you see. The whole NGO thing is being highly abused in the world because corporations are creating NGOs as a way to manipulate and lobby, and it's become a tool of the very powerful and elite. But Oroville is not like that. It is basically a grassroots project from the ground up. So no, there's no strings attached with the money.
Why
but
do
the money
funders
might be
fund?
specified for a building, for a dance hall, for a theatre. That's the only. So it might be specified donations.
Who are your biggest donors, if I may ask?
It fluctuates. I mean, I just saw someone gave $1 million. I don't even know who it was. It fluctuates all the time. But when you have a mature, it's like Greenpeace is going for many years. I'm not saying Greenpeace is a good charity or bad. It's much easier to get donations and grants once you've already got a track record and visibility. So the Indian government channels a lot of money to Oroville. Grants come from foundations throughout Europe. Then there's fundraising from Oroville has entities around the world. Like it'll have an Oroville USA, and they will do fundraising and then channel money to Oroville. So it's a whole compendium of funds that come in, and it changes every year. And then we self-generate 10% of all of our money every year. I mean, it's not
Oroville. Out of all the, just so I get an understanding of the financials, Oroville is producing what percentage of it as can they live on their own without donations?
Oh yeah, sure. I did it in the last presentation. I think the slide's not here. So 10%. When I looked for the last year or two, 10% was self-generated. It's about $1 million a year.
Okay.
And then the rest had been grants and donations and fundraising, and so basically, even if those grants mostly go to infrastructure, they'll build things. But we've already got a lot built up. So even if we didn't get those grants, it could still operate basically on what it's self-generating. It could be self-sustaining, because $1 million is a lot of money in India. You've got to multiply it from dollars to rands and then to rupees, and the spending power is like 4 to 5 times more than South Africa, I think. So it could self-sustain on what it generates, and even during the pandemic, it was still generating a lot of revenue. And that self-sustaining is business units of Oroville making
Through its own
incense.
industry.
Its own businesses that don't pay tax to the government, they pay tax to Oroville, and they give their surplus income to Oroville. So they make things. They make spirulina, they make coffee, they have restaurants, chocolate factories, incense, guest houses, which is what we're gonna. So we've created businesses, and then of course my unit is not a business; it's a charity within a charity. I just get grants from people who want to support Sanskrit research, and then I spend it for Sanskrit research. Basically, that's. But there's many different cases. Yeah. Hi.
So, taking Judy's question again. So, if you're starting a project, there are certain people who have capital to put the capital in.
Yeah.
Okay. And there are people who just purely bring in their labor.
Yeah.
How do you secure those people with the capital? How do you
Okay, so
work with
there's
that?
no investors in a community. There's only donors, and the donation could be time, or it could be money, or it could be in kind. It could be a thing, a car or a whatever. It isn't. So this is the investment in the shareholder model is going to create a sense of ownership, and this is mine. I paid for this building. When we don't even know who paid for a building. We know it could be 100 people or 1,000 people. Like our Integral Health Center was fundraised over many years, appeals here and there. And yes, we could go and look up who gave what, but we know that it was fundraised, and we have the building. It's not the Judy Soul building.
So the question really is that I believe we're going to go through major economic reset, and you're not going to have the funding opportunities that you have today. Probably not. Okay, where you at the moment are supported 90% by exterior funding.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say that you need people to come in who have the capital, maybe all their money. Maybe they've got 500,000.
Right.
That's all they've got in the world.
Right.
They're going to bring that into that. into
Okay,
that
so
project.
you mean so this look. I'm not. We could do another seminar on money itself. It's because a lot of people think that the whole monetary system will collapse, or it will transform, or the rift will deepen in different things. We've had a lot of workshops in Oroville on money. We call it the future of money. We've had experts come. I set up a whole lot of gift economy-based systems in Oroville initially. So that the whole thing of money, at the moment we deal with the system as it is. To go back one step to Judy, once you create a network of interlinked communities that are growing different things and making different things, money becomes almost irrelevant because you just trade within yourself, and really the atoms and molecules are being moved from the earth between the different communities. Your ones that have forests, they will send wood here and carpentry there. Your ones that have a surplus of butternut will send them here. You will have ones that will be making metal work, and some will be making bricks, and that's how it works. And some will be making electric vehicles. I just want to focus because it's a bit of what for the community that we're going to create, the first community or the first few in South Africa. Can anyone suggest anything to add or subtract? We had eco-awareness. Hi, yeah, to you.
Hi, thank you. I think what you're actually talking about here is what is called the care currency, where people can either exchange a good for a good, the barter system, or I can exchange a service for a particular thing. For example, Margie would know about this.
Right.
Margie would agree to look after my children. If I maybe have a skill, I can maybe, fix a washing machine for you.
Yeah.
Right?
So
that kind of currency where it does not necessarily have to involve cash or money.
Yes.
But it's got to do with the exchange of time,
Thank
the
you.
exchange of skills.
Okay, so we have that. So that's we're going to break out. We can do another seminar on economy and money. I'm just going to give the model for how we're going to deal with
There is just one last question,
Yeah.
because we're at that stage now where we need to start, and it seems to me like the missing features are like building materials.
No, because you
no,
just
for us it is building
Right.
materials, because we need to, but there's a strong chance that if everybody has taken the vaccine who makes building materials, then they won't be here in 2 years. So we need to buy those building materials quickly.
Well, the thing in Oroville is you try to break things down to their basic component. So in Oroville, what we do is we use the soil, and we have a rammed earth machine which we make in Oroville with our own metal workshop. So we make our own bricks with our own metal workshop. It's called Orica, and the bricks are made in Oroville, and we can make them ourselves. So this is the point we need to get to. So this is the vision. If anyone has any other ideas to add to the vision, just submit them to the group, and then we will make a document and solidify the vision. Guidelines are so Oroville, once I repeat it, we said that there are no rules in Oroville, but we do have guidelines. And the guidelines are things like you coming there in concordance with the charter and dream. You were asking what the point of the charter and the dream is. It's just that we have a common goal. Otherwise, we may as well be anywhere. If there's no commonality, why are we living together? And then actually Oroville has a rule of no rules. It's a beautiful rule. It's my favorite rule. And then no religion, and people should contribute. But obviously there's many layers of contributing. You could just meditate. I mean, people do that. They could be just sitting meditating all day. It is a form of contribution. We've had people do that for 10 years. Be in their room, write books, or meditate. We value that contribution. It doesn't have to be a visible contribution. And then no discrimination. These are all just obvious, but I'm repeating them. No politics, no drugs, no physical violence, no ownership of immovable assets, and respect for all cultures and nations. So no discrimination of this nation or that nation. And then we don't encourage alcohol consumption. It's not like banned. It's just not encouraged in Oroville, and it's not so good for kids growing up with pubs and drinking. It just doesn't make a nice atmosphere. So that's more in alignment with the yogic ideas of India. And we try to resolve our conflicts internally. Like, we don't run outside to the police when there's a small conflict. Obviously, if there's a big conflict, we do involve the law, but we try to resolve conflict internally. This is a guideline of the community. These are all matured over, it's like a good wine, they've matured over 53 years, and I would recommend we imbue these and then improve on them where we can for the South African context. And then we have abide by the laws of India. It's very important. So in South Africa, we would abide by the laws of South Africa. So is there, just in the conference section of this, I know I'm putting you all on the spot, and just keep it very brief. Is there anyone, in terms of a guideline, is there anything that anyone doesn't like or likes. I'm just treating you as the pioneers. Keep it very brief to like, what would you like to contribute? ma'am?
I'm just
I,
sorry.
Yeah.
so sorry.
Sorry,
Yeah.
maybe, okay, you could go, yeah.
Yeah. So the laws that abide by laws of South Africa.
Yes.
I think I would strongly suggest that we rather lean into abiding by the laws of nature. You know, so the laws of nature should be supreme.
South Africa, India, very big difference at the moment as far as crime is concerned.
Yes,
As far as our safety, our personal
Yes.
safety in areas is concerned.
absolutely.
I know the green belt and all of that, but where we are at the moment, we will have outsiders wanting to come in
Correct.
and to cause chaos. Look at Natal.
Correct.
Just a month ago,
Yeah.
2 months ago.
Yeah.
So what kind of security, I don't want to say security forces because that's a little bit
Right.
dramatic and possibly
Right.
negative, but how do we
No,
secure?
so it's a huge question, and this is something for the last year. So safety is critical. You can't have. There was a community out in Wellington, a pilot, and then they had murders there, and
Yes.
it's going to go in the media, and it's going to just break. I mean, crime cannot be a theme of the community, and as you say, once you bring wealth and you bring infrastructure, it's going to be. Look, there's areas like the areas where there's the risk is higher and lower statistically in South Africa, and you want to also bring up that there's less crime in the area where you are, but you don't want to start the community in a high crime area where crime is going to be a factor. Plus, you want to have communal security. So in Orville, the mother said, like, athletes can look after. We have we have a volunteer community force that looks after the community. It's an open forest, so yes, you're very exposed, but there are. My solution in that is first you have geographical boundaries in South Africa. So the land in Stanford has geographical boundaries. There's a nature reserves and mountains that create like kind of nature protects you. And the second thing is be in areas where the crime is low. Don't start communities initially in areas where the crime is high because it will be risky. Wellington had a community and then it failed because of crime. Lindach doesn't have much crime, but they're very closely knit. And they do kind of all look, they kind of collect. Obviously, a community is going to be safer than one person living on a farm. So by having people together, you are safer. But choosing the area, you should first research. Is it a safe or dangerous area? What does the crime look like in that area?
I'm concerned that we would be attracting.
Well, there's practical ways of architecting it. Like, if you're far away from places that have a lot of crime, like Stellenbosch, like Boschendal, let's say we were to do Boschendal, it has an electric fence and it's a 20,000 hectare farm. Whereas if you were in Stanford, no one has an electric fence around their farm. So just choose the area, just like you would choose for water or other aspects. Choose the area that's not in a high crime area for South Africa. There are areas where crime is very low. My friends in Stanford don't lock their doors. So yeah, I'm just to go back to orientate for the guidelines. Is there? So I don't think that affects guidelines, but that's something that safety and security is one of the things we need to have a group that looks after that. And the kibbutz started in Israel when there was war going on, and safety was a big part of the kibbutz. So they created collective security. So actually, communities will make much safer places for South Africa.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, we were at your second talk.
Sure.
And I really loved your whole idea. So we were quite interested in the Stanford community. I've actually been in email contact with Rishi.
Okay.
And she said to me that that farm is now for sale.
It is for sale, yeah. That's the whole.
Yeah. So it would have to be people who decided, a group of people who would decide to carry on that idea that they've started.
That's exactly it. So Rishi was in Orville and she liked the idea and she wanted to create a community. It is for sale because you have to buy a farm. That's where I'm getting to, or multiple farms, but initially one farm. I just specifically want to keep people on track with the guidelines. Okay, I'm gonna. If anyone's got any ideas to add or subtract, I just wanted to make this a little bit interactive.
Can I ask about
To
the
add
guidelines?
or subtract or question. I'm just using Orville as a model, but I'm not imposing it on what is created in South Africa. The guidelines are, you have no rules, but you have some guidelines, basically.
So when you say no religion, it's that there's not one dominant religion. You can
Yeah.
practice any religion or no religion. Or what does that mean?
People have Christmas functions and Pesachs and Rosh Hashanah, but religion is not a theme of Orville, and all of the negatives that religion has brought, from burning cats, the popes were burning cats, to all of those negatives historically, you don't need them. So there is no religion in Oroville, but people can do their religions as much as they want. They can have Shabbats, they can have Christmases, they can do. We've had public Christmas functions, but it's not a theme of the community. Like we say no alcohol, but people have a glass of wine at home. It's not a theme. We don't have pubs, so it's just a fine line. It's subtle, but the mother said no religion, but she was a mother. So if someone was, we've had a Hare Krishna, a friend of Joan's friend Prashuti, had come to Oroville and he wanted to join. He was still, having his Hare Krishna attire and all that. No one judged him for that or said like you can't join. He just could not come and convert people to Hare Krishna. It's not. I mean, we would tolerate it, but it wouldn't be seen as in alignment with the guidelines of the community. It's a very subtle thing, but it's there, and it makes sense to me. Yeah, I mean, I'm Jewish. I'm by birth. I'll do Shabbat just to keep the traditions alive, but I don't. Oroville is not a place where I feel, you can practice what you want religiously, but it's not a theme of Oroville. You're not coming there for the churches and the synagogues. There aren't churches and synagogues. There's one space in the center which is a place for meditation, and no one says what you do or don't do. You can internally repeat anything. You can repeat nothing. You can do your TM. You can do nothing. You can just sit there with eyes open, eyes closed. No, there's no dogma of what you should or not do. Yeah.
Can I just say one last thing?
It's very beautiful in that way.
Because this is my key
for
thing.
the guidelines, it must be on topic.
It was to do with the financial part of it.
Okay.
The no money.
Okay.
The no money, because we're still stuck with money a little bit now.
No, a lot.
To my mind, the whole idea is to free yourself out of money. So you
Yeah.
can't do that until you've got your equipment and your spades even.
Yes.
Like you need to get your basic stuff. So my thinking was that you needed your investor card. People don't know, because I don't know how.
We definitely don't want investors.
But the ones who are investors, my thinking was that half their money would go towards paying the debts, getting equipment, getting building materials, and the other half would for their house. And paying the debts is one half, and the other half is buying the building materials. And the volunteers would actually use the building materials to build them their house. So then they'd at least have a house which they could have in the meantime. So they had some benefit from having been a person who put.
You can do that. I
funding
mean,
in.
you can create a model with investment, but that's not the model that Oroville. There's no investors in Oroville. We've never had an investor, and we never.
No, they
will
wouldn't
have.
own it. They would
We've had donors.
They would just have the right
We've
to
had
live
donors, and then you can get housing without donating anything. Joan can come to Oroville tomorrow, and she can get a house for free. And you can get a house assigned to you for your work. You can get a house just because you're an Oroville
But
youth.
there are houses, you see. What happens if you still got a building?
Well, we used huts in the beginning, which was we used shack. We built huts and we innovated. We thought laterally. Initially, people were living in huts, basically. But Judy, to go back to your thing of, you do have to deal with money initially, and we've got billionaires and millionaires who've donated fortunes to Oroville and funded the Much Mandir or this building or that building. But no one knows or labels it or even knows. There are many. It's anonymous, mostly anonymous. We don't know that this donor or this foundation or this fund gave it, because we're moving away from moneylessness, and identifying it with a donor or a donation would be in the money-mindedness. But we can talk more about. We can do a conference on money and how I've got a model for turning a farm into a micro community and then joining many farms together for South Africa. But for Monkey Valley, for example, we might need a different model. And if that's what you're thinking
not only Monkey Valley, all the places which you still need to get the money for
I'm
the
going to
land
show you
or for the material. Can I just go one step further? 'Cause I haven't got to there yet. So my thinking is that the advantage that the people who've got money have of putting money there instead of going to a golf estate is that not only have they then got much more house, because half of it goes towards the debts of the company, etc., or buying the equipment that they need for their laser treatment or whatever, their spades, and the other half goes towards the building material for their particular abode.
Possible.
And then they don't have to pay for the labour for their abode. That's coming from your volunteers.
Right.
And then thereafter, once you've actually paid for your equipment and stuff, then of course a lot more can go towards more building material. But let me just finish. So then basically you get to a stage where but they've got the right to live there, but they've also got like free life from then on, because once you're out of the money thing, from then on they don't have any further costs, because nobody has any further costs. No, your volunteers, not the people who actually put the original money in. It becomes irrelevant then.
Okay, we can do I mean, I don't fully understand how, because I've seen the model of Orville where it can work, and that's got overlap with what you're saying, is that we have stewards who donate to create new buildings and infrastructure, or to acquire, not acquire, but to steward an existing infrastructure, let's say a home here. So they steward it, which is effective, like it's not ownership, but you're looking after it, but you have use of it for your needs. In terms of taking care of all your needs, we do have that in Orville, but it's taken time to build it up. But initially, if your needs are simple, like just sharing some lentil soup and living in a tree hut or a peat hut, a thatch hut, we had that initially. We did have where people's needs. We do need to find resources coming from somewhere, and it needs to be channeled. So, but we can write down what you're saying and see if it could work. Just on the guidelines, just keep it on the topic. Is it on the topic of guidelines? No. Okay, then all the other miscellaneous, if it's not on the guidelines, then I'm going to move to the next slide.